Next is Chung, Associate Professor at the Hongik University, Department of Art History and Theory.
First, I want to say thank you for inviting me to this wonderful and intellectually stimulating workshop and symposium. Today I'm going to talk about the storied space of Korean dansekwa. Dansekwa, post-war abstract art in Korea, was loosely formed in 1970s and continues to exist in the work of artists of the younger generation. Yet, interestingly enough, this style of work is not a painterly movement or school, but rather a tendency to create work that is monochromatic, dansekjo, as its manifestation. Dansekjo means the tone of kind of single color. This manifestation has never disappeared and to become generationally interlocked. And on the left-hand side, you see the catalog cover for 1992 Tate Gallery exhibition, and on the right side is a dansekwa exhibition catalog from Korean National Museum. The 1992 exhibition, entitled Working with Nature, Contemporary Art from Korea, consisted of the first generation of dansekwa artists, such as Chung, as you can see here on the right-hand side, Yeon, Kim Chang-yeol, Park Se-bo, Lee Woo-hwan, and Lee Gang-so. The major critical proponent of dansekwa, according to Lee, who wrote the exhibition catalog, defined the work as post-minimal abstraction that is both post-formalist and post-materialist. This first important exhibition of dansekwa for foreign viewers encapsulated the twin forces with its nature, which appeared in writings by both Louis Biggs and Yi. By the way, Yi passed away in 1996. Nature was also a typical East Asian metaphor, often distinguished from any Western counterpart. Nevertheless, Yi did not attempt to radically depart from modernist understandings of abstraction in this exhibition, and this is what I want to discuss here today. And after this 1992 exhibition at Hoam Art Gallery, which is a Lyon Museum, Samsung Museum now, had also exhibition called The Spirit of Korean Abstract Painting. But for this exhibition, they had included ink painting as well by Seo and also Yeon, who spent a long time in Paris. And the reason I paid attention to dansekwa and the critic Yi, last year I assembled all of his writings and by publishing 2 volumes of his critical anthology. And then I got to know he had a very small private collection of dansekwa, so I could see very early Park Se-bo work as well as Kim Chang-yeol's work. And from his private archive, I could find critic Yi here. This is Yi, and very young Park Se-bo and very young Ha Jong-hyun. And now they are all around 80s. As dansekwa was making its formation, critic Yi coined the terms hwanwon. As you can see here, this is I wrote here hwanwon and hwaksan, and here it says hwanwon here. So at the beginning in this writing, he put expansion first, then a reduction later in, as you can see, Chinese characters in Korea, used in Korea. But for this early writing, he used expansion first. And while I'm working on this paper, actually, I got to know that Leslie told me that this Chinese character, this the second one here, we pronounce in Korea hwanwon, does not exist. So this is, I think, and then I was very curious where this was coming from. and I found out that this Chinese character was coming from Japan during the colonial period. So Yi coined, for this exhibition, Yi coined the terms entitled called Hwanon, reduction, and 확산, expansion, in the catalog preface of AG. AG is an abbreviation of Avant-Garde Association's exhibition. In his essay, Yi defined Hwanwon in the essay called The Dynamics of Expansion and Reduction for the 1970 AG exhibition. In this writing, as you can see on the right-hand side, Yi emphasizes today's art as rudimentary forms, a primary state, and a conformation of life. So I want to quote, art reduces to the most fundamental self and at the same time expands into a state of life before art was art. What is in between such expansion and reduction is neither a certain history nor a dialectic. What lies there is a complete and true dynamic of existence. It is because a true creation lies in the awakening of this existence. End quote. This exhibition of AG configured the essential idea of Korean modernist criticism and pictorial traces. By interpreting Hwanwon as an art that reduces to the most fundamental self, Yi and the later Dansekwa artists could create a critical site for modernist practices of abstraction in Korea. Modernist reduction as the rudimentary form of art and life is also evoked in the Park Serbo one-man show at Myeongdong Gallery, which ran from October 3rd to 10th in 1973. And after this exhibition, or during the exhibition, he had numerous interviews, and as you can see here, in an interview with the Daily Korean newspaper, Park said, "My work is action, not an expression." In this early solo exhibition, Park noted that only a pulse operates in his work, and in a way it's a funny empty. Interestingly enough, in Park's remarks, here it says, being modern is the crisis of image, of the artist in negation to tradition. This negation speaks elegantly to the impulse of the avant-garde, and it works as modernist claim a la Clement Greenberg. In the accounts of Yi and Park in these early 70s, there is also the coincidence of encouraging artists to return to the zero point in art. In this zero degree of art, Park elaborates his own line as being original and singular, noting that the copious retroaction on canvas enables us to feel its resistance, and its impulsive sensation leads us to the interior of canvas. On Park's exhibition in 1973, critic Yoo Jun-sang also expressed the idea of Park's work returning to zero point, as Park criticized Euro-centered art as a result of the Western perspective of having humans at the center of a composition looking at a thing. In this interplay of negation of two traditions, Western and modern Japanese aesthetic values and practice, these Dansekwa critics and artists expand their art as an anti-art form, struggling to create the utopian Esperanto of abstraction in Korea. It was Park Serbo who was committed to promoting possible changes to the Korean culture for art and wished to show the work of these artists abroad. Apart from his solo exhibition at Myeongdong Gallery in Seoul and Muramatsu Gallery in Tokyo, the Engdaepangdang de Seoul in 1974 was fruitful in disseminating the practice and formal concentration into abstraction known as Dansekwa. A series of exhibitions and criticism began to establish the legacy of Dansekwa, resulting in modernist myths of Dansekwa in Korea and culminating the 1992 exhibition abroad at Tate Riverville. And now I want to talk about Korean modernism's double fate, which I think that is modernist negation versus modernist nostalgia. From the beginning of Dansekwa to the 1992 exhibition in UK and 2012 exhibition in Korea, there were no serious studies on the paradox of Yi-il's Hwanon and Hwaksang concepts, except for a few scholarly articles. There was, however, revisionist condemnation of Yi-il's critical perspective and other Dansekwa critics, targeting them as descendants of colonial historicism, in particular in their defense of white color in their exhibition titles and articles. In other words, the modernist painterly practice coexists with the modernist nostalgia, returning to the origin and the past. Once is one, if you think of the Chinese character, it designates modernist abstract practice in the same way as Western abstraction. It also plays its double, ambivalent role in designating the return to the origin in the context of nostalgia. Here I want to bring up the double fate of Hwanon and discuss the calling of returning to the origin, the literal meaning of Hwanwon. As a backdrop of Dansekwa, Yi Hwan's recent interview was quoting, quote, "It was the time when everyone's life was frozen in extreme poverty. It was the era of the abstraction. This was the background of the monochrome. With a destitute minimality in impoverished life on one hand, and the oppressive military government on the other hand, the monochrome appeal was ideal fit. Employing single color or the technique of repetition was chosen as an effective collective style for the purpose of expressing the will to resist," end quote. This statement leads us to think of the socio-political and economic conditions of Korea in the late 60s and 70s. Political opinions were easily censored, and the ideological debates of the right and left were fierce. At the same time, President Park Chung-hee, who is the current president's father, focused all of his efforts on modernizing South Korea, effacing to some degree the genealogy of tradition. Beneath this landscape, what makes Hwanwon intriguing, polemical, even problematic is to think of what the origin, the original condition means, to return where, and what is the zero point, and how does it differ in Korean context. The former is the symbolic place on a site to return to, and the latter is a pictorial condition to return to. My intention here, unlike revisionist art historians, is not to criticize why Dansekwa artists turned toward political abstention and formal experimentation. Rather, by looking at original sources, I want to bring up the concepts of Hwanwon and the zero point within the identity of Korean abstraction. And this is the exhibition catalog, and which was held in Tokyo Gallery in May 1975. And this is a very small gray-toned catalog, and 5 Korean artists were chosen, and the critic Yi wrote the article here. Yi wrote an essay that is titled "White Thinks Of" in this exhibition catalog. So I think that was written first in Japanese, then translated into Korean. Exhibition catalog of 5 Hinseku White, with the works by Lee Dong-yeop, Seo Sung-won, Park Se-bo, He Hwang, and Gon Young-woo. To the critic, the white is not the limitation in the use of color of white as the literal meaning. Rather, it operates in the imaginary field of all possibility. This is expression from his writing, actually. He also notes that, quote, "To our artist, the white monochrome is rather a proposal of spiritual vision accepting the world," end quote. Monochrome, the literal meaning of a single color, is being used from this moment, although these artists did not employ one color at all. As you can see here, this is Lee Dong-yeop's situation, and if you see the surface, you can see kind of crack of white porcelain from Joseon Dynasty, and here. you can see the marks and cracks and textures. In struggling to formulate the 0 point in art, Park Bo also attempted to create the locality or singularity of abstraction in the emphasis of physical and repetitive performative. To the critic and painter, the type of dansekwa was not a simple painting but a field of performative involvement, and they used this word called also a physicality. In interpreting the color of white literally, there were actually several foreign reviews, and especially Joseph Love also he wrote later on. I'm sorry. Yes, here on the if you see the caption, he wrote several articles on this dansekwa. Joseph wrote that this dansekwa art that falls into no trap of false nationalist traditionalism, while preserving its root. And for example, a true radicalism. This is a kind of quotation coming from Art International, published in 1975. The true radicalism is challenged by avant-garde artists sometimes because the government, the Korean government, pressed them into service to create 민족 기록화, meaning documenting the progress of Korea. So on one side, they painted abstract painting, but once in a while, the government kind of pressed these avant-garde artists to depict something very realistic, especially to document the progress of South Korea. And also there was Vietnam in this era, so some modernists had to paint something very kind of social realist, but not social realism like North Korea and mainland China during this time. However, Korean abstract painting still lingers in works like by the next generations after Park So-bo, in artists such as Kim Tae-ho and others, as you can see here at the surface. Still the performative act of painting and physical resistance is visible in their laboring with the layers of paint. So dansekwa, as I said, is very generational, and is still continued by the second and third generations. And now, finally, I want to talk about very briefly an unfinished project of dansekwa, the hidden voice of dansekwa artists, and after their stories. The 2012 exhibition of dansekwa was a curatorial attempt to stir the ashes of modernism and rekindle the embers to contemplate the span of 40 years of art in Korea. In terms of museographical sense, the exhibition was successful in bringing modernist issues in Korea, but its exhibition design itself silenced the social-political frame. In relation to a political voice, Hwa Jong-hyun's early works, especially Counterface of 1971, consist of newspaper stacks on one side and paper on the other side. The use of newspaper stacked on the floor is very new in the sense this medium of books and newspapers corresponds to the age of the art of modern city. Ha employed books and newspapers, media, disseminating information when he was actively involved in Eiji period as well. This Eiji period, we say from 1969 through 1973, and on the left-hand side is a newspaper stacks. But as you might imagine, in the 70s, some lines were censored, so they're all wiped out. So it's like a kind of puzzle. So you can guess what's being written there. By placing contemporary, although this kind of experiment was short-lived in the Eiji period, experimental art in the late 60s and 70s produced the least terms and 확산 expansion of modernist and postmodernist thought in art and life. These two terms coexist in the vernacular development of Korean modernism and postmodernism from 1960s to 1990s. In considering dansekwa critically, we also need to explore the work of the students of these dansekwa artists, acolytes who went on to develop the next generation. This is Ha Jong-hyun's piece. So we have to consider also the students of Dansekwa students. Usually they are called the new realist painters, or in Il's terms, new imaginist painters, who preferred the return of images in their paintings. Often painters of the latter, preferring images in their paintings, were openly criticized by the first generation Dansekwa artists. In a recent colloquium with Go Young-hoon, Ju Tae-seok, and Kim Kang-yong, as you can see here, figurative painters in their now late 50s and early 60s, they were taught by Park Se-bo and Ha Jong-hyun. Kim Kang-yong recorded that, quote, "When I painted a brick, endless brick, it was not a real object of brick. Thinking of Dansekwa mentors, my brick was an object that led me to think in a very abstract way. The brick was not the real one, although viewers tried to connect with the real things." End quote. As thick as of the surface Dansekwa artists created, their works revealed layered, storied narratives of pictorial and social space in relation to Hwanon and Hwaksan. These critical terms and Dansekwa grew out of a great social upheaval and repetition, as well as urbanization in Korea in 1970s. In this talk, I discussed the double fate of Hwanon as the modernist negation toward abstraction and modernist nostalgia returning to the origin, which I call vernacular modernism in Korea in the 60s and 70s. Thank you.